Hey everyone, welcome back to another video where I'll be showing you how you can create weaknesses which you can later target and hopefully trouble your opponent enough to eventually win the game. So this was one of my recent OTB tournaments and I'll show you how I did that. The game started out with an open Sicilian, and after a couple of moves I realized the e4 pawn was undefended, so I decided to play an early knight f6, and opponent immediately plays f3 trying to protect his e4 pawn. Now this is quite common in the Sicilian, playing f3 to protect e4 pawn, especially if white is looking to castle queenside in the future. Anyway, I strike immediately with d5, and after a trade and a trade back, I was happy with this because I created some sort of imbalance. Yes, this pawn may look weak, but I have an semi-open b file for my rook in the future, and there is a lot of play to be done because this is not a symmetrical position whatsoever. Anyway, going through here, my opponent played bishop d4, which looks like an annoying move because it ties down my dark squared bishop to protecting the g7 pawn. And in this position, I realized that I had queen h4 check. Now, this isn't the best approach, honestly. Like, the engine doesn't like it. It's not in the top 3 moves, but it's still fine. Black still maintains some sort of slight advantage here. My idea was to simply provoke g3 and create somewhat of light squared weaknesses around the king side, especially if this bishop doesn't fianchetto to g2. And in general, the king side is looking weak now. White really can't castle that way. And instead of going back to d8, I go back to g5 again, kind of taunting him to play f4 and hit my queen again. And this is what exactly he does, and now I go back to d8. And as I said before, this isn't the best approach if you go back. A move like e5, perhaps sacrificing the pawn, would be even better because after white takes with the bishop, I can play bishop c5, and the engine argues that the white's position is already weak because f3 was committed. Now there's no e4 pawn because I traded off with d5, and there's a lot of ideas here with the queen also coming to b6 or a5, the knight potentially jumping in, and not to mention maybe this check could work out in the future. So this is what the engine prefers. I went for the immediate queen h4, and I provoked this sort of pawn structure on the king side, and now it's looking really weak. I mean, just imagine if these two bishops were traded off somehow with some of my minor pieces like this knight and this light squared bishop, white's king side would be really weak. So that's what I was aiming for. And okay, in this position, white played bishop g2, and I immediately played bishop a6, taking advantage of the light squared bishop moved away, and now I'm using another diagonal to stomp down on the weaknesses, not allowing white to castle kingside. Earlier I did mention that white looks to castle queenside when he plays f3. However, in this specific position, I have an semi-open b file, and his queenside is underdeveloped, and there's a lot of firepower that I can get to attack on the queenside if he does end up castling there. So white is kind of an iffy position here, and my bishop is really well placed, I would say, on a6. Here my opponent plays a3, and this is where I play a mistake, you could say. I play queen a5 check, and white would be fine after that if he played queen d2, because I really wouldn't be looking for a queen trade after inducing all these weaknesses and losing tempo. And I would have to play a move like queen b5, and white would start to grab the initiative with moves like knight c3. After a simple trade like this, and let's say I bring my rook in, queen e3, bishop c5, like, I am developing my pieces with tempo and hitting white, but honestly, after a move like queen e4, white does get the chance to counterattack and keep his initiative, and it's, you can say white is slightly better here because these bishops are honestly well placed and harmonious for white. However, white does not do that and misses it, and he plays bishop c3, and this is when I basically start to use the weaknesses I created. First I play queen b6, taking advantage of the dark square immediately, and along with the light squared bishop already working on these squares, white's king side is looking like really easy to infiltrate. My opponent goes back to d4, hoping to kick my queen out and do something, but I play bishop c5. I develop with tempo, and now white is already lost here. And it's actually quite surprising how, after a couple of simple moves, like somewhat natural, especially for the below 2000 level, you're already losing because the dark squares and light squares are just too weak on the king side. These checks may not have been the best option, but they were really a nice practical choice given it was a rapid OTB game against like a 1500. And looking at all these weak squares, bishop c5 works because my opponent really can't take on c5 because after I just take back, the knight is threatening to come in, the rook is coming to d8, the queen and the bishop working together. White really has no good moves to stop all my threats. And if he tries to move the bishop somewhere, I mean, let's say back to c3, I would be getting in this check and it's actually made in two. So he can't move the bishop. If he takes, again, he's lost. And in this position, he tries to eliminate my knight first with bishop takes d5, hoping to simplify stuff and somehow, and like basically divert attention from his weaknesses, because if we do end up trading pieces, I'll have less pieces to attack his king side with. But I just take on d4 first, and I'm still threatening the check and mate in two, and he stops it by playing c3 because his king can run away. I first throw in this check, and then I decide to play rook d8, bringing another piece into the attack. This bishop is pinned, and more importantly, the king and queen are aligned with the rook here. My opponent tries to escape even more with king c1, and here I just take with the rook, hitting the queen, controlling another file, trying to cut down on the squares. And after queen c2, I play bishop e3, and after knight d2, I just take, and I end up checkmating. And going back, I would say it was honestly just making practical decisions, going back the queen h4 check, and going back to g5, inducing this g3 f4, and then I was fine undeveloping again, going back to d8, and then trying to look for some sort of attack on the queen side. So I hope you use these ideas I hope you use the ideas you learned in this video in your future games, and just try to create weaknesses even if they're positional, and then slowly keep troubling your opponent until they blunder. And yeah, see you next time. Keep on playing practical chess. Bye.